time for us to play chess, not checkers. It's about making decisions that will affect us as human beings, our careers, our next generations to come. Did you know that it is now a crime to be homeless? Pay attention. It's not a secret. Look it up. They are attacking our most vulnerable citizens. The Project 2025 plan is not a game. Look it up.
Oh, I love that she did that. Hi again, everybody. It's 5 o'clock in the East. No, it's not a game, and this is not a drill. Project 2025 is their plan. It is serious. It's in writing. It's public. It is a chilling approach to running our federal government that got all the more chilling after the Supreme Court granted Donald Trump absolute immunity. It's the plan that Trump would implement on day one should he prevail in the November election and end up back in the Oval Office. That was actress Taraji P. Henson delivering that warning during Sunday's BET Awards to make sure that her audience and all Americans wake up about what is truly at stake this November. A full-scale reimagining of our entire system of government and who runs it in Donald Trump's image and vision. The mission statement for Project 2025 is a plan assembled by the Heritage Foundation. Sounds like something you'd read on the ex-president's Truth Social feed, and there's no evidence to rebut that that's exactly where it came from. Quote, "It is not enough for conservatives to win elections. If we are going to rescue the country from the grip of the radical left, we need both a governing agenda and the right people in place, ready to carry this agenda out on day one of the next conservative administration." Axios has new reporting on what they describe as Trump's imperial presidency in waiting, writing this, quote, "Trump promises an unabashedly imperial presidency, one that would turn the Justice Department against critics, deport millions of people in the U.S. illegally, slap 10% tariffs on thousands of products, fire perhaps tens of thousands of government staff deemed insufficiently loyal. He'd stretch the powers of the presidency in ways not seen in our lifetime. He says this consistently and clearly, so it is not conjecture." A few other headlines from Project 2025's 900-page-plus mandate, putting Christianity at the center of American life and government. Criminalizing the mailing of abortion medication, the most common form of abortion care, criminalizing sending that through the mail. Taking the word abortion out of all laws, policies, and regulations, as well as terms relating to gender and sexual identity. Removing protections for the environment, denying climate change, eliminating the Department of Education. As the New Republic called it a few months back, quote, "a remarkably detailed guide to turning the United States into a fascist paradise." And now, after yesterday's seismic ruling from the Supreme Court that an American president has immunity for all official acts, there is legally no limit to what Trump will do and can do. It's where we start the hour. It's where we'll start this hour every day, as long as there is news to share on this front with our favorite experts and friends. Writer and editor for Protect Democracy, Amanda Carpenter, is here. President of Media Matters for America, Angelo Carasone, is here. Former Deputy National Security Advisor under President Obama, Ben Rhodes, is here. And Democratic strategist and professor at Columbia University, MSNBC political analyst Basil Smikle is here. Amanda Carpenter, I start with you. It's taken the media a minute. We're behind the great Taraji P. Henson. But I think that the Supreme Court decision has focused the minds of the media, I hope. We're going to try to get through a lot of it. It's about 600 pages long. But tell us what you first sort of seized upon. I know you've been looking at Project 2025 for a long time.
Yeah, and I have. And I also think it's important to show how it's directly tied to the Trump campaign agenda, because I think it's almost too easy for Trump to dismiss it by saying, oh, that's an outside group. And so what I did through my work at Protect Democracy with my wonderful colleagues was put together this resource called the Authoritarian Playbook 2025. And you can find that at authoritarianplaybook2025.org, that talks through the systematic ways that the Trump campaign agenda overlaps and collaborates with Project 2025 in distinct ways that would dismantle our democracy. And I that sounds like really exaggerated, but it is not. And so we went through and really tried to explain in a factual, no nonsense way about how this goes down. And we divided it up to several areas. The first has to do with how Trump will consolidate power to direct investigations against his enemies. There's a lot of material that, policy wise, the Project 2025 agenda lays out how they will systematically do that. That allows his loyalists to engage in lots of regulatory retaliation, putting the tariffs against his enemies, things that he really experimented with in his first term and trying to double the shipping rates of Amazon to punish Jeff Bezos. That clears the decks for that kind of stuff. And so that's where things you'll hear about Schedule F and these purges of civil servants come into play, because they're going to need a lot of people to do that. And Project 2025 has a big job resource bank to vet people to be ready to go on day one. But probably the most alarming things have to do with consolidation of power at the military. We're talking about federal law enforcement overreach when Trump says something that he thinks that shoplifters should be shot on the spot. And then policy-wise, he promised to indemnify law enforcement who overreaches so that they cannot be held accountable. You talk about the domestic deployment of the military, abuse of the Insurrection Act, and you couple all this with an unfettered pardon power, which he's already shown that he has a penchant to abuse in the ways that he's already pardoned his political loyalists and allies. And so this all adds up in the end game, which is always the authoritarian end game, is that they don't leave, right? Because once you consolidate all this power, you can't give it up. And so that's where this always goes. So if people want to check that out, we really did our best to distill it in a clear, easy, factual explanation, because if you look at Project 2025, it is a lot to go through. So let's look about where this intersects, get really focused on the ways that our democracy will be threatened, because that's the quickest way we can get to some solutions in terms of maybe, putting some more guardrails in place when it comes to Congress. Because, Nicole, I think we've learned from this process, we can't keep banking everything on the next election and the next presidency. People have to get to work and get creative now.
Well, what is the solution other than making sure that Trump is never president again and can't put this into action, Amanda?
Well, for starters, I think we've seen the slide of SCOTUS supersizing the presidency for quite some time. And obviously, this immunity ruling is a wake-up call. I think this is to be a time for, Democrats in Congress to really get smart and savvy about reining in executive power before it's too late. I understand that legislation probably can't be passed right now, but this is a good time to start building the case for it. Instead of breaking out about what's going to happen to the presidency, use the power that you have now to build that message, to talk to people, to get solutions. Because I don't want to come off as lecturing as like a Republican that's on here saying Democrats need to do more. But it is my feeling now that MAGA is on the rise, but just simply because they're out working everybody on a lot of fronts. Yes, the courts have let us down, the Republican Party has let us down, but they are not stopping. And so I think we need a lot less panicking and a lot more working.
Yeah, I mean, Ben, there is this thing. I described it to David Jolly in the last hour as, I am a guest in the Democratic coalition. I don't plan on leaving. I'm like the House guest that won't leave. But there is this sense that Republicans with the most malevolent and malignant leader and the most rotten set of enablers have done too much damage. I mean, who is the Democratic Leonard Leo? Who is the writing the pro-democracy Project 2020? And I actually asked 5 people. I got 5 different answers. 1 is the Constitution. 2 is WhiteHouse.gov. Who is sort of sitting in the quarterback chair to give Joe Biden's vast pro-democracy agenda its marching orders to try to push back against what is, malevolent and malignant are the only words I can come up with to describe Trump's plan for a second term.
Yeah, I think you're right to focus on the question, Nicole, and I'm going to get to it. I just want to make one point about Project 2025 that builds on your point about parties, which is sometimes we make the mistake of just thinking, this is just Trump, and Trump's going to come in and somehow this is all emanating from his own interests. When in fact, if you look at that Supreme Court decision, that's the result of decades of court packing by the far right and a relentless focus on the courts, such that we really have no solution right now in the near term for dealing with a 6-3 majority that is changing the Constitution before our very eyes. And so I think we have, first of all, have to make a change now we think about this. It's not just Trump. Trump obviously is the most corrosive force in the party itself, but he's connecting with the worst elements in the party that have been building this authoritarian playbook for some time. And we've seen this, as you and I have talked about, in other countries. In terms of who's pushing back, I would point to the necessity of taking action, not just at the federal level, because you pointed out in your last question, it's difficult. If Trump wins and the Democrats don't control both houses of Congress, well, we'd be dealing with an out-of-control president and a Supreme Court giving him a blank check. Some of the fortification you have to do and some of the groundwork you have to do is at the local and state level. And this has been the case in other countries that have had to try to create antibodies to resist authoritarianism. I think some of the more innovative democratic policy work, both around democracy and around solutions that matter in people's lives, are happening across the country in different states and municipalities. In the first Trump presidency, frankly, his decision just to take climate change, which is one of the examples you used from Project 2025, his decision to pull out of the Paris Agreement did not have that big of an impact in terms of American emissions because a lot of states, California leading them, built their own guardrails around the capacity of the federal government to undo their actions. And so I think part of what the Democratic Party needs to do is not just have a kind of top-down thing where we're waiting for the next presidential election every 4 years with bated breath, although we have to do that, particularly in the next few months, but we need to be building from the bottom up in the same way that the Republican Party has. What are we doing at city levels, at town levels, at state levels? What are we doing with grassroots mobilization? The Democratic Party, Nicole, has a lot of infrastructure. I've been a part of that infrastructure. It's not always connected to each other. Sometimes it's disconnected. Mm-hmm. There's an environmental movement. There's a movement for reproductive freedom. There's a movement for LGBT rights. This all needs to be woven together in the same way that the right-wing coalitions have been. And so we need that kind of collective effort in everything that we're doing, not just for this election, but frankly, it's going to take a generation just to undo what's already been done. And never mind if Trump gets back in there again.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.